Hey folks, welcome to the Gaz and Mel Review Show, a show where we critique a movie that's making waves in the culture today. I'm Gaz.
And I'm Mel.
It is the last show of the year. It's a lot of pressure, but we just couldn't leave 2023 behind without reviewing one of our most anticipated movies, Ridley Scott's historical epic Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Vanessa Kirby, and Rupert Everett as the Duke of Wellington. Now, Mel, I think if you recall properly, when we did The Devil Wears Prada last time, when I spoke about Napoleon, I knew and I predicted that it would be a perfect movie. We would have no complaints about it whatsoever. No, it would just be pure brilliance from start to finish.
Just perfection. No flaws, no issues, no nothing.
I'm fascinated to know what you think, but me, you, and my wife, we went to the cinema with my wife, the producer. We were sitting there in recliner chairs. It was a perfect experience in a way. We were very comfortable. You know, we had our popcorn, the screen looked good, and we watched 2.5 hours of this huge epic. And then the credits rolled, and I looked to Mel, to my left, and Mel just looked at me and went, "Is that it? Is that it? That's it?" And I was like, "Oh, it's not perfect. Oh, my prediction.
Who would have thought?
My prediction was wrong. Oh my word, I can't believe it." But you have seen it again since.
I've seen it twice.
So you've seen it in the theater twice.
I have.
You better than me. I was gonna go see it twice. And I honestly thought, I don't think I want to see this twice in this theater, which is surprising for me.
So can I tell you something? I enjoyed it more the second time than I did the first time. And I think this is one of the problems with this movie is the political opening sequence is confusing. It's a bit unnecessarily long, and I think it adds very little.
Right.
And seeing it the second time allowed me to have a much better sense of what was going on.
Obviously, look, the first part of the movie is all about how did Napoleon become Napoleon?
The part of the problem is the first part of the movie is set at the Revolution, 1789.
Right.
Why it is set in 1789, I don't know. But can I say, the opening sequence where they're using a faux quill was very cool.
For the credits.
Or the opening sequence, not
Yes.
the credits, yep. And then it changes into the same colours of the French flag. I loved that.
Yeah, stylish. You know, this is what you get with $200 million. I mean, it looks good.
But I didn't need to have it starting the year of the Revolution.
Well, he's doing it, Mel, because he's going, God, you know what? I would love to do a guillotine. French people love guillotines. And he has and in fairness, you know, that first scene with the beheading of
Marie Antoinette.
That is very good.
That scene is phenomenal. But that scene actually occurs in 1793.
Right. So historically, like...
We don't need to start in 1789. Just go straight to her beheading. Why do we have that silly scene in the linen cupboard?
And there we go. And so we already started the movie and immediately we're like going, this is garbage.
But just get straight to the guillotine.
I must say, out of all the guillotine scenes I've seen in movies, there's not too many of them. It is a really tense, drawn out, you know...
It's the best guillotine scene I've ever seen in a movie.
Right, yeah.
So I'm happy with that, but there's 5 minutes beforehand.
Right, of course.
Just drop out the 5 minutes.
Because it's a movie about Napoleon, and so he's got to go, oh, Napoleon's in the background, and he's becoming the person that's going to take over all of Europe.
Now, he was not at Marie Antoinette's execution.
Okay.
Because that occurs as the same time as the siege of Toulon.
So he's there.
He's at Toulon.
Right.
Fighting the British, the Spanish.
And is he leading men back then? Is he like in charge, or is he just like a dude?
So what happened is...
He's just like one guy.
He is 24 at the time.
Okay.
And when he arrives at Toulon, the general was a painter. So that's true. He was completely ineffectual. And Napoleon just kind of, not completely took over, but definitely took over substantially.
Okay.
And he was, because he was an artillery officer by training, so cannons, big guns.
And Napoleon in the movies talking about cannons a lot. I think
that's
cannons...
his thing.
It's his first love, really, isn't it? Cannons.
But also that's what he was trained in through the various military academies through his education.
Cannons.
Yeah,
he got his, his Bachelor of Arts in cannons.
Yes.
Right, okay.
You don't need to go military academy. I would just go lob off Marie Antoinette's head
Okay.
and go straight to the siege of Toulon. The movie did it slightly differently, but I actually quite enjoyed it, though poor horse, though a fake horse,
Right.
has the little cannonball that goes into him.
I have never seen a horse get blown up by a cannon before. That was the one thing Ridley Scott did that I was like, wow, that is so different. And it was violent.
And uncomfortable.
Yeah, it was gruesome. And I was like, good Lord, that is really something else. But you're kind of saying it, tighten it up, is what you're saying. You know, it's too loose.
Just get to the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
the thing about a siege as opposed to a battle, this went on for about 4 months.
Oh, right. Okay.
Part of Napoleon's genius was his ability to inspire men to do heroic deeds that may lead to their death.
Right.
We, in this movie, saw no evidence of that from Joaquin playing his Napoleon.
Thank you for saying that.
Now, part of it is there was no opportunity to do so. He isn't given a scene to do that.
Yes, that's true. But I might argue that I think there's probably one scene that he could have done something, but to me, kind of...
After Elba.
Right. Yes, that scene.
Yeah.
But I still think there were opportunities to... Look, I don't need Napoleon, because at a representational level, I understand this is a fascinating movie because you're going... There's many different ways to represent Napoleon because, like, any complicated leader, you could, in theory, cherry pick things to make him look heroic. And you can do what Ridley Scott did and cherry pick things that make him look kind of, like you said, moany and kind of a sex depraved dude, you know. And so you can do all these things. Part of me is watching his movie and going, I would have loved if he kind of had all of it in a way, or at least done some of those things that made me, as you said, to complicate him more. I would have loved to have seen, why is he as good at what he does?
Yeah, I think he is too simplistic
Okay.
compared to what he was in real life.
Yeah.
And I think that is a weakness of that. So I think what we do see is the real complexity and childish teenager behavior with Josephine.
Correct.
And
right.
that is true.
And that is fun.
His letters were of a whiny, lovesick puppy.
Right.
But what we don't see is the other side about how he can inspire thousands of men on the battlefield.
That's my critique.
That's what we're missing.
Right. And that's part of what... Because the thing is, Mel, you know, like we watched the first hour of this movie together. One of the things that I really enjoyed about it, and I agree with you, I guess the plot was a bit dense, it can be a little dull. His relationships are treated very comedically, and they're kind of ridiculous because that's who he was. And that's funny. And Ridley Scott said this, I think he was going, how do I make this interesting to an audience? I got to make it funny. Because, you know, when he makes the noises to get sex from Josephine, it's funny.
Yep.
When he does a sex scene, it is absurdly dull.
I like when he falls down the stairs during the coup.
Right.
And not just because it's comedic, though it is, but also because you can just imagine when you're running a coup, how many people have slips and trips.
Totally. I mean,
Because it's not as well planned as it should be. Like, people fall.
It's relatable.
That felt really real and honest.
Right.
And then his brother just makes up that lie outside the door that they're trying to kill him.
Totally. And I love that.
It was brilliant.
I love the fact that there's almost this kind of geezer, wheeler and dealer of power. You know, like power isn't going in and giving an inspirational speech all the time. It's actually like kind of fibbing while somebody's not in the room to get it. You know, it was comedically funny. And it reminded me, Mel, you know, I was thinking of movies this reminded me of, and I think Ridley Scott at the beginning of the movie was almost embracing his inner Death of Stalin or his inner...
There's definitely moments in the movie that reminds me of Death of Stalin.
Yeah, me too. And The Favourite actually was a movie that I thought about, and I thought to myself, I feel like Ridley Scott has spent his career making these hyper-serious historical things, and he's kind of watched stuff like The Favourite, and he's going, you know, I could really build this in my bloody toolbox, because I think Napoleon needs a bit of that flavour to really make it sing, especially when he's thinking to himself, it's a bit dull, it's a bit boring, and Ridley Scott's threshold for boring is very low.
Very.
And so he's going, let's sex it up, let's add the comedy, let's add... Because so much of, you know, the relationship of Josephine and Napoleon, that's what the first half of the movie's about. Like, really, I mean, it must be, because every time the two of them are together, as a couple, as a marriage, as a relationship, I think the movie's great. You know, it's coming alive. It's weird. It's kind of creepy, but it's also kind of flirty. It's this wonderful mix of different things.
So let's talk about that. So one of my questions for you is Joaquin too old to play Napoleon? And by that, I mean he's meant to be 24 in the Siege of Toulon. He's meant to be 29 when he invades Egypt. Josephine is 6 years older than him. So there are lots of differences.
I think Joaquin is actually fine. I think he's cast okay. I think the script he's given and the way he's being asked to perform everything and the way he's being directed, because I really think Ridley Scott's directing him like a comedy director directs comedy. And I think Joaquin Phoenix is embracing and trusting Ridley Scott that this is all going to work, which is why wouldn't you? The guy is a great filmmaker, right? So you're going to trust him. And so for an actor, I think Joaquin Phoenix is not at fault because I think he's trusting his director that these ridiculous things that I'm enjoying and having fun with and embracing are going to work as part of a giant epic movie. And I don't think it quite works, but individually as scenes, I find him in those comedic scenes really funny.
He's watchable and he definitely has the acting chops. And I'm wondering if one of the reasons Ridley Scott decided, forget the age, I need the right actor,
right,
is because he's worked in the past with other actors who have not been right.
Yes.
And they don't reach the level required. Like Joaquin, if he was given those scenes where he had to inspire the troops, I guarantee he could have pulled them off.
That's exactly what my critique is, nearly, in a way, because I almost go, that scene where he gets an opportunity to inspire his troops to get him back on his side, that is an opportunity to go, okay, Joaquin, we've had fun now. Let's see what you can do.
Make me cry.
Let's do it. You know, because the thing is, I think a brave movie would make him ridiculous, as you pointed out, because that's true, and then go, yeah, but now you have to believe him now. Right?
Now you've got to go the other side.
And yes, this might be a big swing, but this is who this guy is, and you as the audience are going to have to deal with it because we're going to make you believe it. But I don't think he ever trusts himself to even do that. I don't
think he's given the opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think he ever goes, why do we do everything? Why do we just, and if it seems contradictory, that's the bloody point of it.
And he is contradictory. And I think part of the problem is because it was too much of a greatest hit of Napoleon's life, we had to include a bunch of things, which means some of the scenes become superficial and don't allow us to get into the depth we need to really understand this man. Egypt is a classic example.
Okay.
I know everyone who studies Napoleon is fascinated by the invasion of Egypt. It's the whole, I'm following in Julius Caesar's footsteps. I'm following in Alexander the Great's footsteps. I get it.
And it's quite exotic, you know.
But in this movie, it adds nothing. The only thing that actually matters in that entire sequence is Napoleon being told that his wife's having an affair. And we could have put that anywhere.
It's there because Ridley Scott, the director, I want to put the pyramids on screen and I want to have a cannon hit them.
Not historically accurate.
Right.
The Battle of the Pyramids occurred 9 miles away from the pyramids.
Well, that's so boring, Mel. You know?
And also there's no, as all the historians have said, if Napoleon really launched a cannon at one of the Great Pyramids, we would still have the evidence. And
true.
we don't.
And we don't. Yeah, no, we're like, I've been there. That's not there. Yeah. So, no, you're right. And so, but it looks great, right? It looks, wow, look at that.
But then make the movie all about the invasion of Egypt.
Right, okay. But I'm kind of seeing the movie as really a favourite-esque.
It's the best hits.
Yeah, like it's kind of a interesting, eccentric relationship movie about that's kind of part of sex comedy, you know, because it really is, sex is the primary joke between these two. It's kind of interesting and funny and cringy and really good fun to watch. And then as he goes to Egypt, then Ridley's going, the hell with it. We're going to do proper Ridley action.
Big epic battle.
Yeah, whatever it takes. And then you're seeing these big epic things that cost millions of dollars. And then all of a sudden it's like Ridley Scott's whole point is he goes, I'm interested in when he gets a letter from Josephine and then because even though he's doing this big invasion and there's millions of dollars and men at stake, he's going, I need to get back to Josephine because I'm jealous.
And he didn't go back to Paris because he was jealous.
Okay, that's fascinating because that is what that whole scene is about.
He did run away to Paris, but that was because France was on the brink of invasion.
Right.
And when that actually occurred, he'd actually traveled up north into what is now what was Palestine.
Yes.
He'd gone further north. Plague had hit. There were all sorts of issues. Okay. And then France was on the potential risk of imminent invasion.
Hilarious.
And his logic was, this is disputable, I need to go and save France.
Okay. That is a very, very different movie. Okay.
He didn't go back because his wife was cheating.
In the movie, dramatically, I can see that Ridley Scott would go, wow, that's interesting. He's done this whole crazy thing, and then because of one jealous moment, he's going, the hell with it. I'm going back.
And in Movieland, I'll indulge. That's fine.
I mean, that's fine. But even at a dramatic level, I find it problematic because to me, all of that is still within the comedic nature of the movie, right? That is a comedy bit. The bit of like, how ridiculous is it? The joke being that I am here with all this stuff and I don't care because I got a letter. That's hilarious. But Ridley Scott's not naturally comedic, really. And I think he wants to do everything. He wants to have his big Ridley Scott moment, and then he wants you to go, wow, that's ridiculous. But when you put them together, tonally, it's a bit weird. It's not funny enough for me to go, wow, what an eccentric, fascinating leader. It's kind of like, I don't know whether I'm watching a Kingdom of Heaven serious movie or whether I'm supposed to be like, is this The Favourite? Is this The Death of Stalin?
The thing is, you can do both, but a little bit like Quills. The transition is where it matters.
Right.
And his transitions don't work.
I think that's where I'm going. Like, you're right. You can do totally both and impress me, but it has to land, right? You can do a joke that starts as a serious thing, but you got to have your punchline land. I felt like it was two movies and they were not quite achieving either goal.
And part of it is, for example, in the movie, I don't get why he's in Egypt.
And again, maybe it's not just the scene you're talking about. I think maybe also context is important. Like, the Egyptian scene is not telling me how Napoleon is who he is.
No.
And I suppose I would forgive that scene for maybe not being a great punchline as he sees it if the scene had some sort of insight into why Napoleon was able to win the war.
We had a subtle short joke. He had to get on the box to see the mummy.
Yeah, Mel just whispered to me in the theatre and I was like, oh yeah, it's a short joke. He couldn't help himself. Stand on the box.
And I was okay with that because...
It's subtle,
It's subtle and also not true, but the British were using that as part of their propaganda against Napoleon for decades.
Yes.
So one of the things that is interesting for me about this movie is part of the movie reflects accurate historical facts, and then part of it reflects Napoleon's propaganda of himself to the world. And that's interesting to me because Napoleon was an incredibly successful propagandist.
I guess it makes me think towards I'm jumping ahead, but at the end of the movie when he's on the island, he's kind of describing to his kids how he,
They're not his kids.
Oh, are they? Oh, they're
we don't know whose they are.
We don't know. But like,
they're just two little girls.
But they're, he's describing to them like something he'd done or a battle that he'd won. And
it was in Moscow.
Right. And yes, right. And he describes like, he burnt the city down. But of course, we've seen that event, and it wasn't him that burnt the city down. It was the Russians themselves.
Now that is disputed who caused the fire in Moscow, and so there is genuinely a thing of, did it happen by accident?
Right.
A number of French soldiers and other soldiers did something set alight.
That would have been funny.
Was it the mayor of Moscow and some of his men that did it?
Okay.
Was it just another accident? Like, we don't know for sure who started it.
But you're right, though. But
it feeds into the Napoleon propaganda myth.
Right. So you're right. I think the movie does take some enjoyment in kind of showing you that Napoleon is very good at self-promotion when he has the chance.
And both sides throughout the Napoleonic Wars were using propaganda each against each other.
When he does that, I'm interested. I am interested in the persona of what somebody publicly wants you to think they are, but then behind the scenes, there's the real person.
Something
and I
else.
like that. Yeah, and when they do, and there's lots of TV shows have done this. I think The Great is to a certain extent does this. The Favourite and a few others. Like, it is fascinating to watch that. I think Elizabeth is quite good at that. We talked about Kate Blanchett and Elizabeth, about the idea that there's this kind of angelic biblical figure of Elizabeth, but then behind the scenes you see the human part. I mean, that's the reason that movie is fascinating, is the duality of this stuff. And if the movie really wanted to go for that, I would have been totally on board, I think.
Me too.
Yeah, I think I would have loved to have seen him really dig into this. I think Scott is fascinated by the relationship, which is why when they do Egypt, it's about really the relationship. Egypt's a distraction, really, even though it's a lot of money. So he goes home, and then Scott just cannot wait to get Napoleon back home in Paris so that he can get into the jealousy and the marriage.
So let's go back a couple of steps, because I want to talk about Napoleon and Josephine together.
Sure.
Because they are a fascinating, what I would call a power couple.
Totally.
They both had their own unique set of skills that complemented each other to get them where they needed to get. Because they seriously climb in this movie and in real life too. So Josephine was a member of the French aristocracy during marriage 1.
Right.
And her husband was executed by the guillotine during the Terror.
But
I would have loved to have seen a bit more of her complexity.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Vanessa Kirby is phenomenal in this movie.
We agree on this.
Like, just brilliant.
We totally agree on
But
this.
I think they could have given her more to do.
I guess I can only mention, and this is always a red flag to me a little bit. Scott has said, there's a 4.5-hour version of my movie, and that's going to come out at a later date. And I'm kind of going like, am I getting like the crap version of your movie?
You are. In 5 years' time, the only version of this we will talk about is the director's cut, like Kingdom of Heaven.
And that's my whole point, is that like he's kind of done this before.
Yeah.
And so I kind of was like, dude, give me the good version. You know what I mean? Like,
But that's the tension between the movie system and what he wants to do.
Well, yeah, true. And to me, I feel like there's Ridley Scott, the director, and then there's Ridley Scott, the producer, and these two are two different people. I think.
Ridley Scott, the businessman.
Yeah, exactly, 100%. His producing brain is very ruthless about his
and goes,
his own work.
It needs to be 2.5 hours.
Correct.
And that's correct.
From what I have read and what I gather is that when we do eventually, and who knows, Mel, we might talk about the 4-hour cut at some point.
It'll be better. You know that.
I think it will be. I know for a fact that a great deal of Josephine is in that cut.
The same with Kingdom of Heaven.
Yeah.
But it's done better than the cut for... He's done way better for Josephine than Sabella.
Oh, got you. Yes, you're right.
So he has learnt.
Well, yes, you're right. It is... Yeah.
She has a story arc this time.
Yeah, so I think the key, you're right, the Napoleon theatrical cut that we have access to now is definitely better than the Kingdom of Heaven theatrical cut.
Yes.
It makes, because the theatrical cut of Kingdom of Heaven felt like a movie that was way longer. Like
yes,
it felt like it was super truncated. But
what I will say is, and I think this is one of the problems with this movie struggles with soul. I have no sense why we are fighting all these battles.
Yeah.
Is it about the people? Is it about the revolutionary ideas? Is it because Napoleon is a warmonger? I don't understand.
Yeah. I think I feel identical because, as you've already put, there's a lot of money on the screen. And I'm going, why do I care? Now, it's not that I don't want to learn about Napoleon, because I do care about that. If the movie's going... Here is who he is. Here's what he does. Here's how it happens. If you're going to show me the nitty-gritty of what goes on, obviously the movies can only be so long. To me, it's a case of when you're describing who someone is, the smallest thing that they do in the midst of a big battle is what makes you go, holy crap, they're that kind of person.
Yeah.
Right? So if Napoleon is, and I'm totally making this up, but if he's the kind of person that carries with him a superstition with him, right? And every time he goes to the battle, you
want to see it.
I want to see it. And now this is a cheesy thing. It's a trope. But if you see that, you go, that's that guy. That's who he is.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. It's not that I'm going to compare everything to Gladiator the way I always do with Ridley Scott, but when Russell Crowe goes into any battle, He does that earthy, I'm a guy of the earth. I pick up dirt and rub it in my hands.
Yep.
Now, the great thing about that motif is it's good writing because he's doing it every time, you're being told who he is every time he does it.
Yep.
So before you're watching a battle and before you go, why do I care about anything that's going to happen? He does the rubby dust thing and you go, oh, he's a guy of the earth. He's salt of the earth. He's not a king, he's a guy that knows what the ground means.
But I want to get a sense of, if Ridley Scott wants to make Napoleon a warmonger, make him a warmonger. If he's power hungry, make him power hungry.
But he's kind of nothing, right?
And I would say that is similar to the problem in Alexander the Great.
Right.
They're too scared to go, this is who this person is. I think because they're concerned audiences will detest him if they make him a warmonger.
But I detest him anyway, right? I mean, I actually don't...
He's a war criminal.
As you said, he's just moany. He's not lacking charisma, right?
But I think that's the thing is, you can be a horrible human being and inspire your troops.
Right.
Both can be true at the same time. We don't see that.
Well, this is totally
true. We see
true.
neither.
And I watched the 1970 movie Waterloo, right? And, it's directed by the guy that did War and Peace, Russian director. Waterloo is about the title. It starts
the
at
Battle
Waterloo.
of Waterloo.
Rod Steiger plays Napoleon, and it really just starts with that part where he goes to his men and gets them to come back onto his side. And the thing
Which is the lead up to Waterloo. It's not the day of.
It's not the day of, yeah. But one of the things, it's not a perfect movie. But the thing is that I'm watching Rod Steiger and he plays Napoleon as super intelligent, right? He's an asshole, but he's intelligent. Mm-hmm. And he's got the stare of God. He can stare at men and the men go, gee, he means what he says. And so there's this weight and gravitas to him. But you also know that he's a bit crazy because he loses the battle and he's egotistical and he makes stupid decisions. But you also get, I get that if I was a guy with a musket and I'm looking at him, I'm going, yeah, I kind of get it. I get why I care.
And Louis XVIII was a bit on the nose and France was going backwards. And
right.
I want to feel like an inspired, proud patriot.
Right.
And this guy does that for me.
Right.
I'm going to fight with him.
And Rod Steiger's a big guy, he's a big actor. And so he does the big things and he's very good at it. And it's not perfect and it's a bit dull, but I get it. I think whatever Napoleon was like, it probably was like that in some way. And it feels kind of documentary-esque. The thing about this movie is that I never got sucked into the dream of it, right? I never went, that's what it must have been like to look at Napoleon.
Because it's soulless.
Yeah.
This movie is soulless.
Because it just feels like artifice in a way. I get that Joaquin's doing his stuff and I get that Ridley's got 11 cameras doing different things, but I'm also going, I'm not believing it entirely that this is not just a set piece in a movie. And a
classic example is the coronation.
Right.
Again, greatest highlights. Napoleon is crowned emperor. He crowns himself.
Right.
Factually true. However, that was always the plan for him to crown himself. The Pope was aware that was how it was going to work. It wasn't a surprise.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But apparently people in Notre Dame were horrified that he did it.
Hilarious.
And then he did crown Josephine. But I don't really get a sense of, is Napoleon excited about this?
Right.
Is this a dream that he's been wanting for years? Which, yes, he was. But you don't have a sense, is Josephine excited?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's all breadth and no depth.
Which is the problem with the biopic. Or
right.
I think is a massive problem with most biopics.
And me and Mel have talked about this before. I don't particularly mind biopics, but I do understand they can be very formulaic. And you have always had this complaint, which is quite right, where if you watch Elvis or whatever, it's always like, okay.
Well, even the House of Gucci,
which I like. I actually think it's a good...
I enjoyed it too, but I think at times it has the same problem.
It has that kind of thing, and so the shape of the story in a biopic is just identical, the whole way through. And yeah, look, it's about, you're right. And we should probably talk about Austerlitz. Is that what I'm
Yes, so that occurs a year after to the day of Napoleon's coronation.
And because I think that's a good example of where we're kind of going with the critique. Because I don't want to completely ruin the movie. I don't think the movie's totally meritless, but I think...
I think there's a lot of things in this movie that work. And I think this is one of those examples. The Battle of Austerlitz is a brilliant piece of cinema.
And it's aesthetically very interesting. I think seeing cannons hit ice And then seeing...
Which is also factually true.
Oh, is it? It does give you some physical sense of the ingenuity of Napoleon as a strategist, because he's basically a big trap.
Fog.
Right. You know, if I had a description for Napoleon, it's the horse killing movie, because so many horses die. And I really appreciate the fact that this movie makes me go, I never see horses die in movies.
That is what used to happen in warfare from this time period.
Yeah.
There's no cars, there's no tanks.
Right. Yeah.
Of course horses are going to die.
Well, yeah.
And that's horrible. I'm not saying it's not at all, but I think you're right. Ridley Scott is trying to show a modern audience an aspect of warfare that is often glossed over in movies.
100%. And that's the word. You just nailed it. Like, as much as you go, oh, let's shoot a guy and the blood comes out, you're right, the glossing over of that includes the fact that an innocent horse is dead. And there is something about seeing that repetitively that you go, God, the scale of death is just
carnage.
Just total madness. And then, watching horses go into the ice and drown men together with the horse. I mean, there's something about that. It's just, wow, that's brutal.
It's messed up.
It's so full on. Because he uses so many cameras to shoot these scenes, he's an expert on where the camera goes. He now digitally can erase a camera if another camera films another camera crew.
Which is cool. Yeah.
It's pretty cool. But what he does is that he forces his camera crew to dress up like the soldiers.
Yeah, cool.
So
makes it easier.
So that makes it easier to them to blend in. I thought that was really cool. And so he's, you can see he's just on fire. He loves this stuff.
But that scene is on fire.
It is. I don't know how you feel, but there's still this thing where most of what Napoleon does is stand and stare at the horizon.
Yeah, and
right?
Part of the problem is and I need to see this once in this movie, we've never been invited to a war council with their talking tactics. To see Napoleon's genius and his inner council at work.
Right.
Because part of the reason why they won the Battle of Austerlitz is they had a clear plan that they stuck to and was executed. On the other side, Austria and Russia, they were fighting for hours. Didn't reach a plan until very early in the morning. By then, some of their high command and officers had slipped off to sleep somewhere more comfortable, which means the information didn't flow down.
It's interesting. I mean, to me, reminding you that this isn't modern war. You don't have a radio. Part of me also, and I found Waterloo fascinating for this.
But I would have loved to see an example of Chinese whispers going wrong.
Yeah, right. That would have been so good.
Yeah.
Right. It's like
we're going to move the cannon here. I wanted it elevated at this level. Right. And then you see it's been elevated at this level at a different spot. And then you see it muck up.
Oh, that would have been so good. You're writing the movie and I'm like, I see it and I'm like, this is so cool to do it like this.
I need to see it once. But I think these kind of examples would allow you to go, this is the difference between what it's like when you have tech.
Right.
And I've seen it in different movies where, especially World War I, because pre-digital watches, they would make sure their watches were set at the same time.
Right.
So if they were a mile down a trench and the aim was to go over the trench at 11 a.m., 11 a.m. would be the same time on both watches.
Right. Building this in organically into your movie is like, this sells to me the thing, right? This is selling me the whole, wow, this is so cool. You're giving me examples of how the history can be baked into the scene. Unfortunately, it just seems so perfectly organized that...
You want a bit of chaos.
I want to believe I'm there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just so perfectly done.
And do you know what's missing?
What's that?
Women were at all these camps. Women were at the invasion of Russia. So that's part of it. You don't see people doing the washing.
Right.
And cooking the food and the bakeries and everything else that was part of moving armies.
And look, maybe the 4-hour cut bloody resolves this. I know, but that's a different movie. So I can only look at this one and go, there's something shallow about how it is.
But that's because they've deliberately taken people out of the historical narrative.
Yeah. I think the worst part is that I kind of can tell. I, as a viewer who doesn't really know the history very well, I should be front row center as a Ridley Scott fan to go, I'll accept it. Give me what your vision is. But even I can kind of tell there's a depth to this that's kind of missing. And the workhorse of Ridley, let's get it done. We're going to shoot the movie in 60 days. Let's get 11 cameras over here. And I just want to get what I need. That all comes, I think, at the expense of just going, let's make this a bit weird. Let's make it a bit different.
But it's not weird, right? It actually just reflects the human complexity horror vulnerability of real war.
Yeah. Austerlitz, by and large, is a perfect result. It's everybody attacked at the perfect moment.
But I don't know why we're fighting.
Right. I don't know either, actually.
I think there's a line that says, I'm at war again with Austria and Russia.
And then,
but I don't know why.
I don't know why either. And then we're off and we're doing it. So he goes to Austerlitz, they win the battle, and he's going all the way to Moscow. And of course,
that's a completely different thing.
Is that a different thing? Because it feels like the same thing, right? And so, but I guess now let me know if I'm jumping ahead too far. But like one of my thoughts is that he's going through all of Europe. He's got the tyrannical thing where he's going to take over everything. And of course, they go to Moscow, and as we've said before, Moscow burns down for one reason or another.
There's a classic timeline compression here.
Okay.
So the Battle of Austerlitz is in 1805.
Okay.
He goes to Russia in 1812.
Yeah.
So you've forgotten there was the divorce.
That's right.
He marries Marie Louise. Napoleon II is born. There's a whole bunch of stuff. Then he goes to Russia.
What a good name. Napoleon II. That's a great
Napoleon II.
I love it.
And so there's 5 years between the Battle of Austerlitz and Napoleon and Josephine's marriage ending. So we've got timeline compression here. But we need timeline compression.
I mean, making it work is the trick, right?
Yes.
That's the trick. It's necessary, but making it go, it feels natural, right? Yeah. I'll give you an example of where I think it didn't work. I think it didn't work when he goes to Russia and things are not going well because it's very cold. It's very snowy. Hitler had this exact problem. It's very chilly. We should go back. And then there's this very swift kind of wrapping up of like, things are going wrong. Disease is happening and things are just generally going bad. There's nothing in particular. It's just a whole host of things. And then he abdicates in the next scene. It's just like, bang, you're out. You're not king anymore. And he just goes, okay, send me to exile.
Again, so timeline compression.
Yeah.
Because the other European forces had to get there or get near, and then he's forced to abdicate. So it takes time.
Well, this is it. And I suppose my point was Napoleon's whole thing is obsession with power. I want, he wants power. He holds on to it. This is my whole thing. My whole ego's built on this. And then when he abdicates, it's so quick and it's so sudden. And he seems kind of, he's not happy about it, but he's not crying about it. I just was like, I don't get any sense of his internal struggle about it at all. There's no introversion for me to go, what is he really do? Because this would have been the worst crap that ever happened to him, abdicating the throne that he wanted.
Is it though?
Well, that's kind of the tyrant's whole thing, isn't it? Like if you're supposed to be the tyrant, the tyrannical dictator, when you're not one, that's surely got to be one of the worst feelings you'll feel, right? And I thought to myself, I just looked at the whole movie and went, I don't think the movie's communicating really any strong emotions about this at all. It's just kind of going through the motions and sign the check, and then we're gone.
So I think part of the problem, and the reason why there's a lack of opportunity for that, is he spends too much time in this movie talking to foreign emperors.
He does.
And not enough time talking to his inner circle.
Oh, that's so true.
They are the most two-dimensional bunch of henchmen ever.
I couldn't even tell you, Mel, who his inner circle is.
Well,
right?
I mean, I got the cast list so I could go, oh, that is that famous person, as in the historical character they are playing. This is his chief of staff. This is a key advisor. This is general blah, blah, blah. This is like they're playing real people.
Right.
But so you don't see the tension and the friction and the power dynamics between the Napoleon and his elite's inner circle.
Right.
Which if you did, I think it would make his downfall make more sense.
And I'm going back again. One of the things Waterloo does is that it does build those characters a little bit. So when those characters actually die at Waterloo, Napoleon is like, shit, that I like that guy. There's a kind of sense of like, I'm suddenly starting to grasp the loss of my people. I kind of am starting to get it. It's not just faceless men.
And I think what we're missing is about 600,000 roughly went on the Russian campaign. And it wasn't just French. It was French and Polish and Austrians and a few other different nationalities that went to Russia.
Okay.
Roughly speaking, about 40,000 came out in a functioning army. There were others that came out, but they had deserted.
Yes.
Or just not well enough to actually go back with the military.
Okay.
But still, we're talking horrific losses.
Yeah.
We're not seeing throughout that, one, the link to the troops, but also just his own sense of decline in trauma.
Right.
So he, and to a certain extent Josephine during the terror, he has seen so many people die on a battlefield, horses die, but also dying days, weeks and months later from their injuries post a battle.
Yes.
He's lost friends, inner circle, advisors. By the time we get to 1812, not all of them, but a number of them are dead.
Yeah.
Of his A-team.
I mean, that's got to affect him, man.
Of course it is. It's trauma.
Yeah.
But we don't see any of that. Like, we don't have, say, a scene where he wakes up from a nightmare. And as if he didn't have trauma.
To take exactly that and go one step further, I even think part of it is that I don't actually feel time passing, right? You know, I feel like whatever Joaquin looks like and moves like at the beginning of the movie is kind of the same thing he does at the end. And
that's because I didn't age him. And I think that's a problem.
It's a problem. Like, I don't need, you know, a whole makeup-y thing, but one...
You need a little bit.
I just need to buy it.
The thing is, they did a little bit to his hair. They thinned out his hair.
But even at a mobility level, you know, Mel, like, he wasn't the fittest guy by the end.
He really wasn't, no.
And so, but I it's very subtle, but I don't really get the sense of, like...
It's not enough of deterioration.
Right. You know, like, I kind of should be getting to the end of the movie and I should be going, wow, we're a long way from the beginning. Hey, folks, we're halfway through. It's the intermission. Now, there's plenty of good conversation to come, but for now, I'm just going to take a moment just to meditate and center my chakras.
Okay. While you're meditating, it's a good time to thank you, good listener, for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe to us if you haven't already, share our episode with another film history nerd, or maybe visit our website, realmoviesfakehistory.com, for some awesome reviews from Gaz. Gaz? Hey!
Oh, sorry. I fell asleep. I think my chakras are tired. I'm just gonna meditate maybe for another 8 hours.
Maybe we'll get back to the show.
Is making a movie about this conceived tyrannical man-child for 2.5 hours, I'm not quite sure it's compelling enough for me. You know?
Question for you. Do you think the movie is anti-French?
Ah, yes. Well, the French think it is. So, which I love, though. I love that the English critics, 5 out of 5. I think Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian is like, this is one of the greatest movies ever, you know? And I was like, really? And then, like, Le Monde has, like, the most scathing review of, like, what is this garbage anti-French crap that this tripe that Ridley Scott
his American accent.
Yeah, it's just wonderful reading the French reviews and the English reviews and compare it. They're just astoundingly different. It's like, maybe there's 2 different movies, you know? Maybe Scott has cut them different ways. Is the movie anti-French? Well, it's certainly anti-Napoleon. I don't know. I don't think it's anti-French, but I guess France, because of the nature of it being their historical figure, they're going to have a complicated relationship with Napoleon. I'm figuring the problem is more the fact that Ridley Scott's not interested in discussing the complicated relationship. He's just kind of going, man-child, there you go. And the French aren't a fan of it.
They make Wellington look like a hero from scene 1.
Right, well, that is
and that's
true.
part of the problem.
Right, okay. Because Rupert Everett, he's...
phenomenal.
Right, and can I say, Christopher Plummer plays that part.
Oh, I could see that.
And he is so good at it.
Brilliant.
And again, it's very, like, because it's made by Russians, you know, like, they're, French, hate the French. Look at this magnificent, handsome man, you know, and... It's quite funny. Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's not Rupert Everett's great, by the way, as well.
He's fantastic.
He's so good. I actually didn't realise it was him until after.
I told you.
No, I know. I mustn't have listened to you at all. So, like, I only listen to you 50% of the time, you know? So, no.
Common thing.
Yeah.
So I think part of the problem is Napoleon was also a ruler.
Yes.
So whether it's the Napoleonic Code, the changes to infrastructure in France,
oh, right.
a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's part of the reason why the French don't like it, is because you only see an aspect of what Napoleon did.
Yes. And then Le Monde said that, I believe, when they published the review. They were saying, like, you know, he's got all this, like, governmental achievements that are never discussed. Now, they're not terribly exciting, I guess, at a cinema level, but that's who he is,
so
right?
I'll give you an example. When he went to Egypt, he built plague hospitals. They had never been there before.
Right.
He took the only Arabic printing press that was in existence in Europe over there for propaganda purposes, but also to allow him to communicate with the local populace.
Okay. That's smart.
That trip allowed probably the commencement of Egyptology. So I guess what I'm saying is he did more than just battles.
You wouldn't know it, would you?
And I think that's part of the problem is they're just trying to go, not even war criminal, they're just trying to go, this is a movie about battles. But at the same time, they were willing to spend 20, 30 minutes on French politics before he does anything. And you're like, you could have cut that out and allowed to see the bureaucrat. Paris, before Napoleon gets there, is a medieval walled city. Which is why when you have that coup and Napoleon is shooting on civilians with cannons is more interesting to watch because they couldn't flee the city. That changes under his era. The wider boulevards, all that kind of stuff, that starts to happen under him. Okay. So the French Revolution, the ideas of it did a lot. Right. So there was women in the lead of the storming of the Bastille that went to Versailles. A lot of them ended up being executed. Okay. Because they were viewed as too radical. Oh, yeah. And then Napoleon reintroduced slavery, allowed a man to divorce his wife, but not the other way around. Like, brilliant. It's complicated.
Right. Well, I suppose, let me put it differently. He wasn't hated. Like, there must have been a lot of French people who looked about the country and thought, well, this seems okay. This look at that. You know, and so when you watch Ridley Scott's Napoleon, I can't fathom how anyone thought he was any good at anything apart from killing people.
All you see is a general. Yeah. You don't see a ruler.
Right. Which I love. You know, I think it's fair. I'm imagining the English critics watching Napoleon and then Rupert Everett comes on the screen and they're like, oh, five-star movie. Yeah. I mean, this is unbelievable.
It's a great Wellington.
How good is this movie? It's terrific.
We're going to win.
And then they cut to Napoleon. Napoleon whines about something like, God, this movie's so good, you know. And then the French critics are sitting there and Rupert Everett come on. They're like, this is a terrible movie. It's you know, it's awful. And then, like, you know, Napoleon, like, moans about, no, Josephine doesn't love me anymore. And you're like, oh, for God's sake, 1 star. I mean, like, you can
see why.
It's a legitimate criticism, I think. I mean, there is, and, you know, Ridley Scott, oh, God, you know, he's very funny, Ridley Scott. I mean, he has gone off at this. I mean, they've asked him about this and he's just like, he told the critic just to fuck off, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
he did.
He just told you, you know,
but
fuck off.
If you get to 85 and you're still making these huge blockbusters, you're going to say that. Because you're like, who cares?
He just said, like, you know, and then he said something hilarious. He was like going like, you know, the only thing French hate more than me is the French themselves, you know, or something like that. And I was like, that's hilarious. And then like the next question is like, where do you live, Ridley? Like, where do you live? And he's like, France. You know? And I was like, he's so funny. I mean, you're right.
He's so British.
He's so grumpy and British now. And he got 85 years of grumpiness built up. And geez, he's loose. Yeah. Very loose. The French are like, it's propaganda, basically. I know that's what they say.
Put it this way. The French would never make a movie like this about Napoleon.
No.
Only the Brits would.
Not even the Russians made a movie
this bad. But even the Germans wouldn't, right? Like
No. You know, he's just a whiny child. I mean, is he really like this all the time? Because he's just such a whiny...
He's a workaholic.
Right, you know...
I'll give you an example. He marries Josephine. They have a 2-day honeymoon. He goes and invades Italy.
I mean, that's kind of interesting. You know, like if you see
many months later, they spend 4 days together and then he goes invade somewhere else.
Right.
He's not sitting at home with his wife.
I mean, that's kind of interesting, right? That you have to be a certain kind of person to have that drive, you know? I mean...
He's a workaholic.
Yeah, right. You know, he just seems whiny, honestly. Like, he gets to Russia, there's no one there. He's like a child with no toys. He just walks about, he's like, oh God, you know, there's no one here. And then he sits and he has a sulk, you know, and he's like, I have no doubt he sulked, but the movie's 90% sulking. It's just so much sulking going on. Yeah, chunky and grumpy, you know, this is what it is. And in the interest of trying to balance out the negativity, of which there is a lot, right? I totally understand, listener, I'm with you. Like, Vanessa Kirby is bloody fantastic.
Phenomenal.
She's bloody brilliant in the movie.
And should win the Oscar.
And if we're going to talk awards, I feel like she is definitely the one that is going to get the movie the closest to what it wants, because it's a Oscar season. Ridley's going for it. He's 85 now, he could do a one. And so
So I want to go back to near the beginning of the movie for a second.
Yeah.
Where she has very short, cropped hair.
Yes.
So during the terror, the ladies did cut off their hair in preparation for the guillotine. And that was the height of fashion at the end of the terror. They did go to these survivor balls and they did have short hair, which they eventually grew out longer.
Hilarious. So yeah, it just shows you how fashion can be created by necessity, right? Yeah, she's terrific. And I'll tell you, you know when she's terrific when she does that seduction scene, right? It's, the scene where I'm talking about.
Where she opens up her legs. And you might remember it better, but she's like, there's something special down there and it could be yours. It's this extended. And once you've got it, you'll always want it.
Right. Now, every actress, if you read that scene and you think about how it's played and marked out, you go, oh, that's going to be tough. Because that scene is so easily comedic and laughable and cringy. But Vanessa Kirby's good enough that when she says those lines and they're kind of absurd and they're so overtly sexual, you might be laughing at it, but you're not, because she plays it so straight and she sells it so strongly that you're sitting there going, she's really got him, and so that's how good she is.
And it's a fascinating scene because a cliche movie like this would seduce him with her eyelashes.
Right.
Or a low-cut dress. Or flirting with a fan. She does it in such a kind of...
Totally.
It's very honest of like, this is one of the things I can offer you is sex.
Well, yeah, you're right. It's overtly sexual. It's not like, a lot of movies play it safe by maybe doing a metaphor.
Yes.
Right? They do a metaphor and then it's not, you don't risk the cringiness maybe or the misunderstanding of something. But she's just going, it's sex, right? This is it.
And sex is amazing with me. Like,
right.
Phenomenal, fantastical. Like, I can make you go wild.
I mean, not an easy thing to play. And to do something that lacking subtext, but give it depth and, the kind of strong foundation of character that you need to go, God, she can pull that off. You believe it. And that's probably the hardest scene to act in the movie.
Oh, completely.
Because I don't know, as much as, and I've said this a little bit at the beginning, I think Joaquin Phoenix, he's not even going to remotely get nominated. I'll be surprised if he is.
No.
And I think he's very shortchanged because I think he's got many moments of which he has a moment to either be truly monstrous or truly charismatic or truly anything. And he's not really any of these things.
Classic example is that silly slap scene during the divorce proceedings.
Right.
Which did not happen.
Okay.
And as if, like, think about it from this perspective, an emperor would never, ever slap their wife, the empress, in public.
Right.
That is viewed as scandalous behavior. And part of the reason you would never do that is it implicitly gives others permission to strike at the monarchy or at an emperor or an empress.
Yes.
So politically, you would never do that. It's daft.
Yeah, right. I mean,
if you're going to do that, you do that in private.
Right. Which, could have been as interesting.
But it's kind of trying to show that he's a bit of a monster.
I'll give you another example. After they get divorced and Napoleon gets remarried, I think one of the best scenes, and this just shows you how much material Vanessa Kirby has that Napoleon doesn't have, is that Napoleon comes out of the carriage and he's carrying his baby.
Which is true. That did happen.
Right. With another wife.
That's the nanny.
Sorry, right.
That's not that's not the other wife. That is the nanny.
The nanny, sorry. Yep, you got it. And so he brings the baby over and there's this moment where you realize like how, because before it even happens, you realize how do you play that scene where you're like, you've lost who is kind of the love of your life. Yeah. She's both tied to him, but also kind of, I don't think, likes him as well. She's got this fascinating relationship with Napoleon. She's
still kept her title of empress.
Okay.
And she gets a pension of like 1 million francs a year.
It's a tough life. Yeah.
You know, it's not disastrous either.
Yeah, I know. She's terribly depressed about it. And so the checks will fill the hole. And so he brings the baby towards her. And of course, she has that wonderful scene with the baby. And I must say, the baby maybe should get an Oscar. Baby does a good job. And,
Baby's cute.
And, you know, she says, you don't know what I gave up for you for France, or something along those lines. And it's really great. And it is a moment where you go, that is a great moment.
Probably the best line in the movie.
Yes, it is. And it's so ironic though, Mel, that the movie's called Napoleon and she's way ahead in emotion.
And I'm wondering whether he would have been better off writing a movie about Josephine.
Oh, couldn't agree more.
And make him the secondary character. I think he almost wants to do that movie.
You see, that's my thing. I don't need it to be a movie about Josephine, but I kind of can tell. I almost think that's what he wants.
But then make it Napoleon and Josephine. And make it more even.
And part of me just goes, I just think he struggles by going, how do I make a $200 million movie about just the relationship? I need to make it about...
She was sent on diplomatic missions.
Oh, I know, but I think his producer brain goes, I need to make it about... I need everything. I need the Egypt, and I need, you know...
Problem.
That he needs... Yeah, he has that thing. And so this is where... And look, I've said it already. I think you've got Ridley Scott, the director, and I think you've got Ridley Scott, the producer, and I think they're different people. And I think the director part is so good when he's turned on, but when he puts his producer hat on... I think he goes, how do I justify 200 million? Yeah, I'll cut that. Big battle, that'll do. We haven't talked about Waterloo, but, you know...
And we're coming to it, folks, don't worry.
You know, by the time we get there, and I'm aware of what Waterloo is, and it's a big thing of history.
But the Waterloo matters to the British much more than it matters to the Prussians and the Poles and the Austrians.
Right.
Like, it's
a big British deal.
Yeah, and that's partly the British propaganda machine.
Yeah.
Going, we defeated Napoleon.
Screwed him.
But it was a coalition.
But also,
it didn't happen on their own.
Can I draw? Also, it was also Rupert Everett has that moment where he goes, "Thank God they're coming around the corner because we're in trouble."
Yeah.
We weren't doing so great.
And if the Prussians had got there an hour later, there is a slim chance Napoleon could have won the war. It wasn't a foregone conclusion.
Right.
Sorry, I should say battle, not war. The general view by historians is even if Napoleon had won the Battle of Waterloo, he still would have lost the war.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, look, by the time we get to Waterloo, yeah, like, I'm kind of done a bit, I just kind of go, like, they had that moment, and I kind of alluded to this earlier. There's this moment where Napoleon comes off the island. He's kind of thinking, gee, I want to rule France again. And then he goes to the men.
This is part of the problem.
Yeah.
It looks like he comes back to France because he thinks his ex-wife has been having an affair.
That's exactly what they
Not
said.
true.
Okay.
So he discovers she's dead when he's still on the island of Elba.
Oh, because he discovers afterwards in the movie. Right, okay. That's interesting. So what was his motivation?
No one did tell him that she had died. He read it in a journal.
Hilarious. It's not as dramatic when that happens, is it?
No. But apparently when he did die, he locked himself in a room for 2 days and was distraught.
Yeah, fair play. Show me some emotion. I mean, there's an Oscar in there for that distraughtness. I mean, I don't see any of this. He's just a bit grumpy really afterwards. That's a shame.
I think he gets a bit bored in Elba. But I think the other thing is Louis XVIII's reign is not going well.
Right.
He's unpopular.
Yeah, okay.
The governor of the island has left.
Okay.
When he shouldn't have. And he sees an opportunity to escape. So he's like, bugger it, I'm going.
Yeah, right. So it's just opportunism, really, right? Because there's one shot in the movie and it's him on a big rock and he's going, I'm going to go. And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of...
No, it's not just...
And it's really skipped over. He just jumps on a ship and it's very swiftly there. And then they have this meeting, right? And it seems to be quite a famous meeting where he meets the French soldiers. And the French soldiers are there essentially to go get back on your island. But he, through what is supposed to be, and you can jump in with a history, some sort of astounding charisma, the men go, we love you, Napoleon. We are going to join you. And to me, I'm like, that sounds like such a great scene. How on earth does a leader in exile who's returning after genuinely humiliation look at those men and go, you know how it is, I'm the guy. And you think, oh, wow, there's a character moment there for the ages. And I watched it in this movie and I'm going, what a whiny guy. Like, I wouldn't follow this man.
Not only that, he did that probably, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 times.
Okay.
Because every time they'd send troops out to meet him, they would defect.
That's
but he'd go
hilarious.
further. The next lot would defect. Then the next lot would defect.
Oh, that's great. I mean, look how talented would he have been at speeching that, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
you don't see it. What you see is he puts his hand on his heart. He shows a medal from Austerlitz.
Right. I mean, that sounds so interesting and so funny. How on earth they wrote it? I mean, David Scarpa that wrote it, he must have wrote it with blindfold on because it's so boring. What else has he
written that's good?
Sorry, say again?
What else has he written that's good?
This is I'm glad you asked that, Mel.
Because there's nothing.
I gotta say, Ridley Scott's worked with lots of writers, Steve Zalian and John Logan, and these are big people, and David Scarpa.
Yeah, come on.
I mean, he wrote The Last Castle, which I don't know if you've seen. It's a Robert Redford movie from 2001. It's his best movie. Let me put it that way. It's his best written movie.
Which one's that one?
Robert Redford's in prison and James Gandolfini plays the prison warden. It's kind of a war within a prison movie.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yep.
It was a video store movie back in the day, I feel like. He wrote the Day the Earth Stood Still remake with Keanu Reeves.
But neither of these are A-list movies.
No, they're terrible. Terrible movies.
They're C-grade at best.
Day the Earth Stood Still is not a good movie. Not a good movie. And then he wrote All the Money in the World, which is genuinely, and I know people like this movie, it's one of Ridley Scott's worst movies.
Okay.
It's not a good movie.
Yeah. So he's not good enough.
No.
And it shows.
The good news, Mel, is that he's writing Gladiator 2.
So we know how that's going to go.
So he's got another chance to redeem himself next November on the 22nd. So we'll
go and see it.
And we will probably be talking about it next December.
No, we won't, folks. We promise we will do Gladiator before we'll do Gladiator 2.
That actually would be good. Yeah, we probably should do. Yeah, that would be.
We talk about it enough.
We do. I do. I feel like we've done Gladiator because we do 10 minutes per episode, so it's a long game.
Okay, so we are at Waterloo.
Yes, we are. Yeah. Okay, so we're at Waterloo,
and this is what we call kind of like Napoleon's 100 days of back in power.
Okay. Right. Yeah. The short, the little blip on the map. Yeah. Okay. So
we have that great scene with Rupert Everett as the Duke of Wellington at a war council.
That is good.
With the King of France, the Tsar of Russia, the Emperor of Austria going, we need to deal with this dude.
Yes.
Let's stop mucking around.
And I love that you're right. It's written in hello, but it's also them just going, cut the shit. You're right. Let's sort this out. This bullshit.
We should have dealt with him last time.
Right. This guy has gotten away with so much crap over the years. Yeah, it's true.
We need to get rid of him.
And also there's this cockroachy thing to it. Like, is this guy still going? Are you still going? Good God, And then they're like, hey, he's got a lot of men. And
because we're all here by hereditary right. He's an upstart as far as we're concerned. How dare he be so popular?
Can I also say it's contractually obligated in any Napoleon movie that you need to show a map with Waterloo on it, and then someone draws a circle around it going, Waterloo.
Well, because no one knows where Waterloo is.
No, they don't. But I've watched three movies.
In Belgium, folks.
Yeah, I've watched 3 movies about Waterloo, and every movie requires them to have this map, and you're like, what am I looking at? And then they go, bruh, Waterloo, there we go. It's really funny. And I looked at Mel and I was like, when we see it in the cinema and they do the same thing, I was like, of course.
But I like a good map. I like it too.
I thought it was funny, but it's you have to have that shot. It's quite funny. You might as well, could they just take the shot from an old movie and just stick it in? You don't even need to refilm it. Can we just put it as stock footage? So anyway, at Waterloo. I was thinking to myself, okay, surely the movie's going to hit, a real peak now. I mean, Ridley Scott's thinking about the movie. This is the big thing, the big battle, the end, the conclusion, the epic ending of the ages. And then it's just kind of like every other scene. It's kind of Napoleon spending a great deal of time studying the horizon in a grumpy, foul mood, slightly weightier, a little slower, tough getting on the horse, breathing heavier.
He's old.
And then
not that old, but older.
And then, people go up to him and go, what do you think of this? And he's like, yeah, do it. And you're going, why do I care? Why do I, why?
Because this is a movie that's meant to be French. It's made by British people.
Yeah. I know.
That's part of the problem.
And you're right. And then they cut to Rupert Everett and he's on the horse and he's straight.
I know, but he's like 20 years older at a minimum.
And he's got the uniform that's impeccable. He's going, right, come on, let's do X and Y and Z. Let's strategize this out and all. In the 1970 Waterloo, it's all about obviously that one battle. So I feel like I have a good geographical idea from that movie about how big it was and everything. And I found it very funny because the old version of Waterloo is so clear. There's massive wide shots of everyone. They're on the left. He's on the right. The left's moving now. The right's pushing back. You're getting, it's just so geographically clear to me. I'm like, I know where I am. I know where that guy is. And then Ridley Scott does it with like 50 cameras. And I'm like, where the fuck am I?
On the left is the right flank. Where is it coming from?
Let's do this. But and the funniest parts are like that movie's 2 hours long on one battle. And Ridley Scott does all of that in 15 minutes. And I'm like, Jesus, is fast. Because I remember the last time I watched this, it was bloody slow. One of the things I got, though, from it is that, like, the reason the 1970 Waterloo I enjoyed is because, as dull as it is, you actually get how it's organized. It is, like, slow. You have to go get the right moving. It takes, like, 20 minutes to get the right guys moving down the flank.
Completely.
Like, it's a long thing.
And occasionally they need to go and have a pee break.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And eat some food. They're fighting all day.
And the guys are tired. They're exhausted because they've been...
don't forget the mud. It was raining.
It was raining. And they're
all night.
And his dude is like, hey, I don't think we should do that. They're exhausted. They'll get slaughtered in there. These guys are fresher. And I was like, this is interesting. I get this. Ridley Scott's just going, fuck it, let's do it all. Everybody fucking get in there.
We're now going to have a cavalry charge. Then we're going to have the square formation.
2 minutes at a time. And it's just, don't get me wrong, I love a good battle. It is quite impressively filmed. It's a bit dark. It's a bit muddy looking, to be frank.
And it was meant to be. It was muddy.
I know, but it's all a bit like blue. It's very blue. Yeah, I don't know, Mel. I'm still going, why do I care? I don't know. He's just a spoiled brat, at this point. And he just kind of sits there. And because you said it earlier, you don't know any of his two ICs. You don't know any of the other men. So when people die, you go, I don't know who these people are.
And I don't care.
I don't think I care, really. And then when he finally is kind of taken down, you go, I mean, I know you were saying it's kind of propagandish, but it does you kind of go, well, if this is how the propaganda is going to go, I might as well support Rupert Everett. He's a nice guy. And I don't know, what did you think of the battle, honestly? Like, is it the ending the movie deserves?
So what I really did enjoy was watching the hollow square formation.
Yes.
Which I'd never seen in a movie before.
Right.
And they did use that formation to defend from cavalry charges.
Got you.
And then if someone got injured or died, they'd be put into the middle of the square and they could be looked after.
That was very cool.
So that was cool. And just seeing them, how they formed that and how they moved into formation was very cool.
I totally agree. That's good. And that is in Waterloo as well. And it's easily, in both movies, the most visually alluring bit. Yeah. By this point, to be honest, I just want Napoleon to die. And this problem is that because I know Napoleon doesn't die, it's almost like he's not going to die because he doesn't die here. I know that. And so it's almost like I'm just going, just capture him. I mean, just get it done, You don't
even see him being captured.
Yeah. And
because he's not captured that day. It's a little bit longer still. And this is where you need the timeline compression.
Well, I said, the movie's simultaneously too long and too short. Because it's too long because I'm not interested, but it's also too short because the battle gives me no sense of space and time in a way. And so, as much as it might be a little duller, I'm wondering if in the 4-hour plus version, like, surely there's a bit more breadth to Waterloo in terms of going, here is what the stakes are. Here's what happens if he does do a frontal attack, here's why it's risky, right?
So I'm going to say something you're going to hate.
Okay.
If you want to do the life of Napoleon, it needs to be a TV show.
Yeah.
I want nearly a season or 6 episodes in Russia.
Yes, got it.
I want to see the weather was warmer than usual, how they got picked out slowly, what were the consequences of staying in Moscow for 2 months, which was way too long, that slow retreat back. I also want to see how disciplined the Russian troops were in that retreat that went for months and how they slashed and burned everything. So there was nothing for the French to eat.
I am, as you know already, I'm not a massive fan of the TV format, but watching this movie, 100%. And I said to you before, we spoke about the Scorsese movie this year, Killers of a Flower Moon. That is literally a TV show in a movie. And so as much as I want to see stuff on the cinema screen, I came out and I was like, I think it's a TV show. I think you're right. And to get to that level of detail, that's the only way you can do it.
Now, in reality,
Yeah.
Wellington and Napoleon never met.
Okay.
That did not happen.
Which in the movie, it's on a ship, I think.
Yes.
Right.
And it's a great scene.
Napoleon's talking to the kids about how great he is. He says,
Again, seeing a lack of not chemistry.
like humility.
Charisma.
Aye, right.
But you are seeing how far away he is from reality.
Yes.
I'm the first one to acknowledge a mistake. I just never make one.
Right, which I quoted too. I mean,
Which is
it's a good
fabulous,
line.
but I wanted to see some of that delusional thinking earlier.
I guess the way to put it, if you saw the horrific narcissism early, you would have went, oh, that he really can get that bad. You know what I mean? He can be that.
He's bought his own bullshit, literally.
Yeah, but you're so true. You know, that narcissism is only revealed at that level of depravity later.
Too late.
Too late.
We need to see that earlier.
I totally agree.
Instead of the stupid reason of going back to France, which is Josephine, we should have seen Napoleon go, I can save France. I can be her savior.
And almost have that be so absurdly narcissistic that you go, God, this guy can get that off the rails.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would have been a great characterization to help you kind of understand where he is in most of his...
Yeah, he's a little bit unhinged by then.
Well, that's right. And yeah.
And yet his men would still follow him unhinged. So what does that say about his reputation, his charisma, his everything?
Yeah. I just think it's a funny thing that Napoleon was exiled to an island twice. You know, like that's
But this island was further away.
right. Get him
It's on the west coast of Africa,
Get him in the
quite
ocean.
far down south. And this time the British had more boats going round the island.
God, it would have been easier just to kill him. You know what I mean? It's just so...
So part of the problem was, and it was discussed, is remember, he is viewed as an emperor.
Okay.
The other monarchs of Europe don't want people to think it's okay to kill emperors, kings, czars.
Because they are one.
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's part of that mystique.
Okay. It's because I also was like, how did he not die?
Because he was coronated. Because he's an emperor.
Good Lord. I mean, he was a lucky man. And
he played the game.
Yeah. And then, you know, he's on the island again, which is quite funny. Different island. It's, you know, maybe less rocks, more plants. And so he's on the island. And
which is way bigger than what the movie suggests.
You know, and I was discussing this with my wife, the producer, and we thought the ending of the movie, right? It's kind of, can I compare this ending to another movie, a better movie? I was thinking of like The Godfather, right? One of the greatest movies ever. The reason why the ending of The Godfather is really quite spectacular is because you've got Marlon Brando in a type of exile. He's there and he's playing with one of his children, and they've got this scene that's bittersweet because, you know, he's a man that regrets his decisions, but he's also aware that his life's ostensibly over. And so he's trying to live his life, and he has this really sweet scene where he puts, like, you know, the orange rind in his mouth, and he's trying to scare his kids.
Which is cute.
And the kids are scared, and there's the vegetables that are growing, and you get this you just get this whole old man life in this short scene, and just as he's bringing some joy to a child, he dies.
Yep.
And it's so profound in a way, because you're just like, man, life can just suck. You know what I mean? It's such a great way to say ending of someone's life is not nicely written. It just stops in the middle of nothing, right? You know, so that's how it is. And I watched Napoleon and I just was like, I never got that. And I think that's what he's going for. He's trying to go for this reflective thing that's going on. Like, think of the whole movie we've already been through, and where does that sit with me? And because he's so narcissistic and there's no depth to it in a way, it's just kind of him falling over after bragging. And I'm kind of going, why do I need to see that part, I guess? Well, there's nothing profound about it, I suppose.
So what you're missing is he spent a number of years on St. Helena.
Right.
Which is where he wrote his memoirs.
Oh, right. Okay.
So another kind of egotistical.
So you can read these anywhere? Is it?
You can absolutely read them.
I bet you they're you know, really
balanced. So they
balanced.
were one of the best sellers of the 19th century.
Hilarious. Okay, good on him.
So the general belief is that he probably died of stomach cancer.
Ah, okay.
And he didn't just fall on the bench one day.
Because there is something just, I don't know, to me it's like a filmmaker thing where they're just like, let's just have him fall out of frame. That'll be poetic. And I just was like, nah, I don't get it.
But it should have finished probably at Waterloo, the movie.
I think you're right. You know, something simple, even simpler, get him on the boat. He's on the way to the island. And he's just looking out at the ocean at his home country that he's not going to see again. And then that's the fucking end of the movie.
Yeah.
You know, like you just go, that's good. Yeah, I can see there's just a minute of him going, shit. You know? I don't know.
But the reason why that's trickier is he's Corsican. France isn't his home country.
Right.
So you can't do that.
Which I'm sure the French, every time something negative about Napoleon comes out, they're glad to point out that he's not actually
and
French.
To Ridley Scott's credit, he did say he was Corsican.
Yes, right. Half of it is Doctor Strangelove, and then the other half of me thinks it's Gladiator, and I don't think Ridley Scott knows which one he's doing. I think he wants to do both. But one of the things about doing both is you need to be really good at tone to do both. Because as you said, it's how you transition it. You need to get that absolutely spot on. And I feel like there's just kind of a rhythm that Ridley Scott knows so well in his head. He's got a rhythm of movies, and he just does that. And it doesn't matter what he's doing, this is how I do it. But the problem is I go, I think when you do something different like this, where you blend comedy and serious historical stuff together, I think you need to branch out. I think you need to do it. You need to do, like you said, do one scene way different than you've ever done it. Because the battle scenes in this may be good, but they're battle scenes in any other Ridley Scott movie I've seen before.
No. And Austerlitz is a phenomenal battle scene. Like, it's not an average one.
No.
I would say it's better than all the battle scenes in Kingdom of Heaven.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I think you could be right. I think it's really impressive. But
that's not enough for a movie.
Right. This movie wants to be something more. And I think he needed to go, I need to push myself here. I don't think 11 cameras are going to do it.
And you get that with how much more he's given Josephine in this movie.
I'll be very curious. I think when the Oscars are coming out, end of Feb, we'll have to chat about this. I'm so curious if Vanessa Kirby gets the nod, because it's
I'll be angry if she's not nominated.
She should be nominated. I will say the competition this year, brutal. It's going to be a good year. The next year's Oscars are going to be tough.
But Joaquin
race.
Doesn't.
No.
And it doesn't get Best Picture. But I do think Rupert Everett is a chance for Best Supporting.
That would be fascinating, yeah. He's in the movie long enough to make the grade, because I think that...
Anne Hathaway was in the movie in Les Mis for way less, and she wins an Oscar.
That'll be very interesting. So we'll have to talk about this, when the nominations come out.
And did you have a little box office?
Yeah, a little box office. Obviously, brand new movie. But let's do it. Let's do small box office. So, the budget. Apple Movies, Apple Studios, have funded the movie. It's somewhere between 130 million and 200 million, depending who you talk to. It's
all about tax credits.
I would imagine 200 is more what it is. We will stick to 200. It's only been out 10 days, Mel, so this is the fastest release that we have probably recorded of. So out of the 10 days since release, it has made 88,169,000 worldwide, which the reason this movie is made is not for cinemas, it's for Apple TV.
But it's still doing relatively well at the box office.
And you're right. I hope that this is a reminder to streaming services that if you don't theatrical release your movie in wide amounts of theaters, you're losing free money.
But not just that. So for me, part of what makes this movie glorious is it's on a big screen.
Totally.
And it's not just the battle scenes. It's the coronation scenes. It's the ball scenes. It's the scale. That guillotine scene is phenomenal with Marie Antoinette because it's ginormous.
Because it's this is why we saw it in the theater, because I was like, I am not the biggest fan of the movie, but I want to see it on a theater. Yeah. I want to see it big.
I also want to see it where it's dark, and I want to see it where it is socially unacceptable to have my phone on.
Right.
Because if I have it at home, my phone's sitting there.
Because it's immersion, right? It's about immersion. And I'm not going to go off, but David Fincher's new movie came out, which is The Killer. Netflix put it on a very limited amount of screens, and that is a damn disgrace. Because that movie should be in 3,000 theaters.
Yeah, I agree.
And so, you know, we should be talking about it. And it's free money. It's free money. I mean, literally, like, the movie is not going to make its budget back in the box office, but it doesn't need to.
But it didn't try to. But partly because there wasn't a really aggressive campaign.
Yeah.
Like, Napoleon has a huge aggressive campaign.
Yeah, very aggressive. Like, Sony Pictures are pushing this.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and you laugh, the movie, because the French press ripped it to shreds, it's still number one in France. Which
Yeah, of course it is.
Yeah. It's caused, there's so much controversy.
Which
in
they've
France.
all gone to see it
They've
because they
all
want
gone
to
see
talk about it.
Everybody wants an opinion on it. How bad is it?
And I wonder, again, if that's partly deliberate, is if you make it a bit controversial, there's a reason to go.
Right.
Because everyone loves having an opinion.
And because we are not rich, my one regret is that we couldn't fly to Paris to see the movie in Paris.
It was amazing.
Because I would have loved to have walked in and be like, what do the French think of the movie? You know?
Or in Moscow. What do the Russians think?
Well, that's right. You know, like, this is to get the local
what
atmosphere.
What do the Egyptians think?
Yeah, well, that's right. Especially when their own, you know, heritage is being shot at.
You're blowing up a pyramid.
I know, but there we go. But it's doing well. But like I said, you know, release these things in full, please. You know, so you want to do the Rotten Tomatoes game, Bell?
Okay.
I'm going to skip through a couple of movies in Ridley Scott's filmography that I believe you've seen, but I'm going to get you to have a quick guess on whether or not you know how much. What was the percentage that the critics gave it at the time it was released?
Okay.
Now, the first one I'm going to go is a movie that me and you talk about quite a bit. Whether it deserves it or not, I'm not sure, but I like it. A Good Year.
I love this movie, but the critics hate it.
Right. Okay, well, I'm glad you know that. So, if you had to guess, Russell Crowe's A Good Year, the wonderful Avignon movie, holiday movie, what was the percentage of it on Rotten Tomatoes?
I have it on DVD, and I watch this a lot, especially when I'm sick.
Yeah.
I'm going to say they gave it like 55%.
Oh, right. You're going to love this. It is the lowest rated Ridley Scott movie on his entire list at 26%.
What's wrong with these people?
I know, man. That movie is quite...
I love it.
I know. I like it too. I don't know, man. So, they a sappy romantic comedy lacking any charm or humor is the logline. I love it. So, yes, they
When
were...
he sticks the finger to the cyclist and goes, Lance Armstrong, I love it.
Yeah, I know. Kingdom of Heaven, we'll skip to that one then. 2005. No, Kingdom of Heaven, no, we're talking...
Wait, Kingdom of Heaven did better than A Good Year.
Yeah, it did, yeah. So, and we're talking theatrical, by the way. I'm not So, Kingdom of Heaven, theatrical, what's the Rotten Tomatoes
Okay, so we got 26 for Good Year.
26.
Okay, I'm going to say about 40.
Wow, you're on it.
Yes!
40%. I'll add in the sound effect of correct answer. That was very good. Yeah, 40%. Although it's objective and handsomely presented, it lacks depth.
But it's also marketed towards, in part, teenage girls. And the average critic at the time is like a 40-year-old male.
Yeah, well, that is true, and I think that's what they said about Kermode. Why did Kermode didn't like Titanic? Because you're not a teenage girl.
And I think he really took that piece of feedback to heart, and has since thought a lot about some of the other things he reviews,
right?
Especially where he knows they are not made for him.
Robin Hood, Russell Crowe, 2010. So it's, again, we're going up the list. It's a little higher, but what do you think the percentage for Robin Hood was?
I still can't believe this is better than A Good Year.
This is,
52.
44%. So still quite low in the list.
I like that movie.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
It's got some problems in it.
A few gripping action sequences, but it's missing the thrill of the adventure that made Robin Hood a legend.
The Cliffs at Dover sequence is fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. That's quite good. Mark Strong's pretty good in it. Okay, now we're cooking, right?
Okay.
So Napoleon.
Yep.
Just out 10 days. What's the percentage?
49.
Ooh, 59.
Okay.
Which I think between England giving it greatest movie ever and France giving it worst movie ever, 50 seems about right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we're running up to the top. Okay, so Gladiator.
So I know it's now a cult classic.
This, you're going to get angry at this next part, but yes, Gladiator. What do you think?
But I don't think the critics would have loved it when it first came out. Like, I think this was a bit of a surprise hit, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Roger Ebert's review is super negative for it. It's fascinating to look back on it. He was so wrong, but that's
so
fine.
I'm going to say 66, 67?
80%.
Oh,
so
that's better than I was expecting.
It's actually better. Okay, I've got one more for you. The Last Duel, which is that Matt Damon, Adam Driver,
Ben Affleck.
So,
Jodie, what's her surname?
Jodie Comer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who was supposed to be Josephine in Napoleon.
Yes.
But I pulled out. So The Last Duel, we seen this together.
Did?
It was a strange experience. I can't say.
It doesn't work.
I don't think it works. Where do you think that is?
I want it to be worse than A Good Year.
And think about it, right? So we've got Gladiator at 80,
Yep.
and we've got A Good Year 20, what did I say, 26?
Yep. So 35?
So the Last Duel is 85%.
What?
On Rotten Tomatoes. The critical consensus of the critique of systematic misogyny isn't as effective as it might have been, but it remains a well-acted and thought-provoking drama.
Robin Hood is way better than that.
The Last Duel's not very good.
It's rubbish.
It's funny how everyone really got into this. We actually complained that, like, the movie, as much as it's trying to say something about misogyny, it doesn't say it very well.
It's also just very clear that she was raped.
But
And then raped
times.
by her husband.
But like more than once,
Yeah.
because they just show the same scene again, right? So
But not just that, as in, that is from different angles the same scene.
right. I mean, that's
When you get to her perspective, it is very clear she is raped by the dude, and then it is not a consensual sex scene with her husband.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I feel like the movie's got a real. I don't know. It's done much better than I thought. And can we just spare a thought for 26%, please, for a good year?
year.
That's okay. It's okay.
No, it's a really good movie. It's not just okay.
I know, it's fine. This movie's good. What's the problem? Anyway, it's very funny. Ridley Scott will clearly never make a sequel to another good year. So we won't be getting that. But we are getting Gladiator 2 next year.
Now, this is our last episode for the year.
Ooh, it is.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, movie suggestions, following us on social media. We really, really appreciate it.
So good, honestly. And can I plug a few things? If
Yes.
that's all right. So if you want some more content in the meantime, before we're back in, when do we come back?
2024.
2024. In the meantime, my review of Napoleon is now on our website at realmoviesfakehistory.com. I'm doing the Oscar movies this year, Mel, so I'm reviewing all of them. So I seen Jonathan Glazer's The Zone of Interest, which is fantastic, but my review's going up on that by the time this episode is out. So if you want some more content in the meantime, jump on our website and you can check it out. Yes, and we're back in 2024. We don't know what we're doing.
Not yet, but we will have a fantastic new episode.
And yeah, so for those of you listening, thank you again. By the way, don't forget, subscribe if you haven't already. Share the episode. If you know someone that might like it, let them know. We really appreciate it. And hey, look, if you have a suggestion for a movie you'd like us to review or tackle in a historical way, by all means, give us an email. realmoviesfakehistory@gmail.com. That would be good. And I suppose have a great holiday.
Yeah, I mean, we're going into summer in Australia.
Yes, hot, man. It's hot.
It's going to be fantastic.
I'm going to have the air conditioner on by the next time we record.
And I'm going to go to the beach.
Oh, that's good. I am not going to the beach. So, no beach for me, thank you.
That's okay. But bye for now.